people in the shelter, at the top of my list is going to be daily population rounds. It's that important, and that's because it touches essentially every pet, every place, every person that is in the shelter in some way. And it can be such a game changer for your population and for your population management in your shelter. And this is a way to sort of bring in all the things that we've been talking about so far. And it's the operational tool that allows you to apply that to that population and to your pets. And so I hear all the time, or our team hears all the time from organizations that either skeptical of that or you think you don't have the time. Today, we're here to talk about, of course, the how to do rounds, but also the how of the implementation, and to give you a plan that should make it accessible for you to implement in your shelter, even if you've struggled before and haven't been able to get it off the ground. Remember that we have our population management working group, where as a companion to our webinars, this group provides this collaborative space for all of you to get together and apply these learnings to your shelters. And so we can look deeper into the things that we're learning. So things about pathway planning. If you're having trouble implementing rounds, we can help you with all of those things. And so I encourage you, submit your interest by filling out this form based on that QR code here. This is our outline for today. So we'll do super quick review just of what was talked about in the first couple of weeks, and then we'll dive into the why, the who, the how, the when, all of the nitty-gritty of daily population rounds. And as I mentioned, we'll set you up with a plan to get started. We'll address some of the common challenges, things we hear from shelters that have tried to get rounds going and they're just not successful. So how do we address some of those obstacles? And then I'll share a success story with you. Just a recap from before, from what you've heard in the first couple of labs, proactive population management. Every single day matters. Every extra day that even an individual animal spends in the shelter, that compounds over time. And every day that we can shave off of an animal's length of stay also compounds over time. What that means when we zoom out and look at the whole population is if we reduce our length of stay, we can move more animals through our systems. For open intake shelters, it means we have fewer animals on site every single day. And even just shaving off one day off of your average length of stay can mean the difference in tons and tons, entire rooms of animals for some of our higher intake shelters. And so just a single day, whatever we can do to identify bottlenecks and shave that one day off can really, really matter. And for individuals, it means better health and welfare and across the population. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're all here for, right? And that is more life-saving. All right, so get ready to put in the chat. I'm interested in hearing from you before we start. What do you think about this cat? Imagine you're walking around your shelter, you're doing a walkthrough, a daily walkthrough, potentially daily population rounds, and you see this cat. This is a cat that I encountered in a kennel while I was on daily population rounds in a shelter. This was a cat who came in late on a Friday night. We were doing rounds on Saturday morning. She was slated for a return to field outcome, and she was waiting on surgery. This particular shelter only had surgery on Monday through Friday, and so we encountered her here in this kennel. And this was, you can't see the whole kennel, but essentially this is all that was in her kennel in addition to some food and water. And so think about, yeah, so I see some of the chats. Needs a Heidi box, stressed, scared kitty. Yes, absolutely, all of those things. And so we encountered this cat on rounds. And so keep putting your answers in the chat, and we're gonna come back and revisit this cat a little bit later after we talk more about rounds. But again, real case that I encountered as she was waiting for her surgery to happen on Monday so she could get returned to field. All right, overview. What is daily population rounds? It is a physical walkthrough of the entire shelter. So we're walking through every area. We look at, lay eyes on every animal that's on site. And ideally we do this every day, although certainly we have situations where we do it 5 days a week, or we can make modifications to make it work, but ideally every day. Who attends? I have a couple in bold. So it's somebody from medical, somebody from operations, and that's kind of the minimum. And who can be variable depending on what kind of staffing you have at your shelter. And if you have, for example, a behavior department, include somebody from behavior, somebody from outcomes, somebody from foster care, and potentially even more that we'll talk about. But really that core is going to be always somebody from medical and somebody from operations, and then other departments as applicable, depending on what your staffing looks like. How long does it take? And the goal here is an hour or less for the whole shelter. Some of you are probably from very high intake shelters or shelters that have a lot of animals on site. I hear you, right? We have 500 animals on site. There's no way we can do the entire shelter in less than an hour. And I'm here to tell you that in fact you can. The very first shelter that I implemented population rounds at in a big way was a shelter that had 700 animals on site. And once we got good at it, once we got efficient, we could get through the entire shelter in 45 minutes or less. And so even for those larger shelters, it is possible to get through your whole population. It doesn't look that way in the beginning, right? It takes some practice, and we'll talk about exactly what that trajectory looks like when we start talking about implementation a little bit later. What are the goals of rounds? So certainly it's to improve the quality of care for individuals. Just like we're talking about across all of this series, it's proactive population management. Daily rounds is one of the operational tools that lets us proactively manage our population with the goal of reducing length of stay. Added benefit is that it improves collaboration across teams because we are all getting together to do this walkthrough together. This improves our communication and improves our ability to collaborate. And so not only do we see benefits for the pets and the population, but we also see benefits for the people. And then again, as always, one of the goals is to increase life saving. So who should go on rounds? Let's dive a little bit deeper. So we talked about some of those representatives from various departments, but really thinking about the who. And so having representatives from those departments that have decision-making authority is going to be important. So one of the benefits of rounds is that we're standing there together, we can have a quick conversation, we can collaborate and address an issue that we're seeing with an individual animal or with our population. But in order to do that effectively, folks that are on rounds need to have that decision-making authority. Ideally, we have somebody who can provide information about the individual animals. So somebody from animal care, somebody who can provide information about medical, right? If we're looking at an animal in front of us that has a medical condition, we want to know, is this animal already on treatment? What are our available treatment options in the shelter? So who can provide info about that animal as well as the capabilities of the shelter? Similarly, with behavioral care, what are we already doing and what do we have the option to do in our shelter? And then somebody from outcomes. So this can include adoptions, transfer, foster. So we're walking through every area of the shelter. We're laying eyes on every single animal, ideally every single day, but what are we looking for each animal? And I find it really helpful to ask this list of questions. Who are you? Do you have identification? Do you have a kennel card on your kennel? Does the kennel card match the animal that's in the kennel? How are you? This can be physical health, so medical. This can also be behavioral health. Are you where you need to be? For example, these highly adoptable kittens, are they in an area of the shelter where the public can see them? Will they be able to get adopted? Or if you're an animal that maybe shouldn't be in that visible area, like a confiscate or an animal on a court hold, are you in a quieter area of the shelter that's not open to the public? What do you need today? Or what do you need scheduled? Also, example with these kittens, right? Maybe they haven't been sterilized yet, and so we need to get them on the surgery schedule. And then ultimately, how long have you been here and why, right? And the most important question that all of this goes back to, right? How can we get you out of here? We're focused on trying to move our pets through the system. And so what are the steps we need to take to move you along on that pathway? And how do we get you out of here? We can also look at more broadly, rather than just the individual animals, but look at each enclosure and each area, each room, each kennel ward, right? Are those areas clean? Are the animals' needs being met? Do they have opportunities to express normal behavior? What is the temperature like in these rooms? What is the humidity like? What's the noise level like? I encourage you, as much as is reasonable, to use all of your 5 senses when you're entering rooms in the shelter. All right, when should we do rounds? We can do it at any time of the day, but we find there's some benefits, if it's possible, if you can pull the appropriate people together, there's some benefits to doing it in the morning. If you do it before cleaning and feeding, you can see, for example, what eliminations look like overnight. It's helpful if you can do this before you open to the public, so that way there's fewer distractions. And just in general, we know the later it gets in the day in busy shelters, we get, like, things come up, fires come up that we have to put out. And so by doing it in the morning before people get pulled in a lot of different directions, it gives us more opportunity to be consistent and to get that consistent attendance. Generally, we do recommend Do it at the same time every single day. And I would say, even if you have folks that can attend on an individual day, the group should still go and do rounds, even if you're missing a person. That consistency is part of building this into your operations. I have gone and done rounds as a single person, right? Even if there's only one person attending, that consistency is part of what builds this into your operational processes. Okay, so we're walking around the entire shelter, we're looking at each animal, we're going into each room, each area, and we've identified an issue. And so what do? Essentially, we have two possibilities. The first is if it needs discussion, we can discuss it right there. We're all together, we're standing in front of that kennel, we have leadership, we have medical, we have behavior, right? We have outcomes, and we can have a conversation. Or we can write it down as an action item that requires some follow-up later. Sometimes that follow-up is to have a broader discussion, or it may be, for example, like the cat, like we had in our suggestions, provide, the kitty in kennel 2 with a hide box. Oftentimes we hear that shelters have not been able to really launch rounds effectively because it's not efficient, because it's taking too long. And so this is the key. We want to leverage that we have the important humans together right here, looking at this kennel, looking at the same animal. And so we want to take the opportunity to have a discussion if we can do it quickly. But if it's taking longer than 30 to 60 seconds, we have to do it later. We have to keep moving, right? When we do the math, when we think about trying to get through 100, 200, 300 animals in an hour or less, for the majority of kennels, we're really spending just a couple of seconds. But even for those animals that need longer, we can't really spend longer than 30 to 60 seconds. And so if you're noticing that your conversation is taking up more time, the action item becomes, let's discuss Fluffy later. We have options for this list of action items. How do we know about, or how do we keep track of all the things we have to follow up on later? And we can do this old school, and we can do it on pen and paper, or we have options for electronic versions, so shared spreadsheets. I also have shelters that use things like an Airtable or an Asana project management software with a form for entry. And as long as you have Wi-Fi, this is such a great option. It means multiple people can be entering onto the shared document all at the same time. And you can even set up things like automations for assigning those tasks based on, is it medical, is it behavior, what department does it belong to? All right, let's run through some examples of action items that we might be writing down as we're doing rounds. It might be something that's more urgent, for example, like this dog here, signs of infectious disease in general population. If you can see, if you look closely, so this dog was in a kennel in Gen Pop and was literally dripping snot down on his neighbor. He was in an upper level shoreline, dripping snot down on the neighbor downstairs. And so that's something more urgent. We may write this down for movement. This may be something, though, where we even radio to animal care staff and say, we need this taken care of immediately. We might notice that we are late on intake vaccines on an animal or on additional doses, monitoring appetite and eliminations. Do we see something that warrants a vet or a tech check? And what's key here is you likely will have a vet or a technician on rounds with you. We're not actually entering the kennel and going in to check out these situations right now, unless it is truly something that is emergent, like an animal bleeding out, right? This is, we write it down for a check later. We have this really busy, really important group of humans together, and we have to keep rounds efficient. So if there is a medical concern, unless it is literally an emergency, right, we'll write it down on the action item list for follow-up later. Behavior action items, and I'll play these videos, and so you can see a couple of these dogs. We have signs of kennel stress, so fear, anxiety, stress, and frustration. Maybe our action items become prioritizing these animals for enrichment or an individual plan. Is it highlighting for foster care? A more comprehensive behavior plan, potentially medications. If we have animals that are overwhelmed by the shelter environment, do we have an opportunity to match them to better housing? Do we have quieter housing available? Items for animal care. Taking a look at kennel setup, right? We saw that cat earlier, so things like hide boxes. Do our cats have perches and scratching pads? Do we have food and water available? And is it placed appropriately in the kennel? Do animals have access to soft bedding? Do animals have in-kennel enrichment available? And if there's enrichment provided, are they actually engaging with that enrichment? Animal flow action items. Do we have animals that are getting stuck in stray holding areas? Their stray hold is up, but they're still hidden in the back. They're not visible to the public. it's important for any animal, but is really important when we start thinking about our highly adoptables like the puppy in the photo, right? Are those highly adoptable pets visible to the public so they can get out of here? If we have expected intake coming in, do we have open kennel space for that intake? Can we plan for that? And what are our bottlenecks? For example, adopted animals that might be waiting on spay neuter. Are we seeing that as a pattern? Is there a bigger process solution that we need to talk about in order to solve for those bottlenecks? From our outcomes teams, like adoptions, transfer, foster, are there pets that we need to prioritize for foster care for a variety of reasons? Do we have harder to adopt pets or pets that we're noticing as we do rounds every day? We can see that despite our best efforts, they're behaviorally declining and they really, really need a marketing push. Do we have an upcoming transport and we want to ID animals for that? And do we have quality photos, ideally videos and bios, so folks perusing the website can see these animals? As you can imagine, right, rounds benefits individual animals, it benefits the population. We're talking about all of these potential things and interventions that we can use. But rounds benefits the humans in the shelter too. And this is because it is efficient. In so many situations, this can actually replace something that you're already doing. In so many shelters, we hear staff are actually doing physical walkthroughs of the shelter. They're just doing it independently. So this can potentially replace some of those individual walkthroughs, and it will definitely replace some of the long back and forth email chains that we've all been a part of, right? Because we're there together, we're having a conversation in front of the kennel, right? And that it makes things so much more efficient. It allows teams to work collaboratively. I'm sure many of you have experienced in one shelter or another. Sometimes our departments get really siloed, and so we're not actually talking to each other, and we only interact via email. And this allows us to interact collaboratively together. And that direct communication, again, it's just so much more efficient than back and forth email chains that waste time. And we all know if we had one thing, more time in shelters could help us so much to help get more of these animals out. And so if we're doing rounds effectively, rounds is so efficient. You heard the last couple of weeks about generally population management, but specifically about pathway planning. And rounds is a perfect place to start operationalizing pathway planning. We can use rounds to identify animals that are behind on their pathway. If you've been working through the workbook activities, you've designed these optimal pathways for animals in our care. And we can use rounds to identify who is behind on that pathway. Who do we need to take extra steps for in order to get them out of here? There's a lot of different strategies that we can use, and I present some options here. Some shelters will actually use physical checklists, either on the kennel or filed somewhere else. We can use rounds to identify animals based on their length of stay, and we can then assign them to staff members to follow up on to make sure that we're doing all the steps that are in that pathway plan. And then I also encourage shelters, in addition to daily rounds, run reports based on length of stay, and we can use that to identify animals that, again, are getting behind on their pathway. Here's an example in this photo of an actual checklist for a longer length of stay animal that's actually posted on the kennel so all staff can see it. And then this is an example of an Airtable for pathway planning. And what I actually really love about this particular implementation is that so much of it is automated based on how long they've been in care. And so if you're thinking, as I know many of you are, like, oh my gosh, all of this looks great, but who's actually doing these steps? What I would encourage you to think about, who has time for all of this? If we're doing pathway planning and we're proactively managing our population, we will move animals through the system faster, and that opens up more time. You've seen this guy before, right? This is my reminder to all of you to be proactive. We know, I'm sure many of you have experienced dogs like him. They tend to spend a longer time in the shelter, and so don't wait for him to be in the shelter for 30 days before we start taking proactive action. Write him down right now on day one in daily rounds and put him on your list to come up with a plan. Start that pathway planning for him and take those steps to get him out of here. Rounds lets you jot him down. And so an action item for this dog might be make a plan for him to get out. All right, let's run through a few examples of things that we might encounter on rounds. And then I want to call this out. So this will be in your resources. This is a little quick reference that I recommend you print out copies of this and take it with you on rounds, especially as you are getting started. This is a nice little list of reminders and examples of things, of action items that we might identify as we go on rounds, both for individual pets as well as our general facilities in the population. All right, so this is a dog that we encounter on rounds. She is a dog that came in yesterday as a stray intake. So today is April 16th. And so she came in yesterday. As I look at her, as I walk up on rounds, I'm paying attention to her appearance, I'm paying attention to her kennel setup, and I'm also paying attention to her behavior. And so she's sitting there, a big group of humans is walking up to her kennel, and she's sitting there quietly like this. I notice that she has a collar, and I also notice on this kennel card that she has a microchip as well. And so this dog, to me, all of these things together say, oh my gosh, this dog has an owner. And so the action item for her, unless somebody knows for sure who's on rounds with us that we've already followed up on these things, her action item becomes follow up on the RTO for this particular dog, because we want to get her back to her people. All right, this is another kennel encountered on rounds. So this is what you see when you walk into the cat room. And then when you open up one of those little compartments, this is what we see inside. And so the questions that I'm asking are, who are you, right? We have this little clipboard, but there's no kennel card. And then how are you? And as we talked about with the cat trying to hide under her newspaper before, how are you? Are there things that we can add to this kennel that would provide better welfare for this group of kittens? Things like enrichment, things like soft bedding. And then the best thing, how do we get you out of here, right? These are highly adoptable kittens. So what do we need to do to move them along on their pathway? All right, here's another kennel example for you. So again, another kennel that was encountered on rounds, and then lots of signage happening here. I'll give you a close-up. So this is an example, or this is the close-up of the signage that's on this kennel. As we walk through the shelter on rounds, we're thinking about things wearing our shelter staff hat, but we can also think about things as if we were a potential adopter walking through the shelter. And so as you can imagine, the sign is put here for the welfare to protect this dog so it doesn't get a foreign body. But what message is all of this signage sending to the public? Is this potentially a turnoff? Because I'll tell you that when the public sees this sign, what they're thinking is this, right? And they'll bypass this dog and not give this dog even a second consideration when they see a sign like this. This message is important to communicate to our staff, but is there a different way that we can communicate that so we're not sending this message to adopters? And I would argue if we have dogs that are being destructive and destroying soft toys, they're even in more need of appropriate enrichment, right? And so can we provide different enrichment, different toys, things that are destructible or consumable to still provide them with that extra enrichment? All right, so back to our kitty cat friend. So we recognizing the FAS, identifying that she needs a hide box, right? And so for this cat, what are the things that I'm writing down in rounds? Number one, it's going to be hide box for kennel number 2 or whoever she is for sure. And then I'm asking, is she on the surgery schedule? I mentioned to you, she's on an RTF pathway. Here we are Saturday morning, surgery's not till Monday. Is she on that surgery schedule? Can we get her in surgery on Monday so she can get released the very next day? And then what if we're in this room and this is the room where the cat's waiting for RTF and waiting for a spay neuter are all, what if all the cats in this room have a similar appearance? What are our action items then? One action item might be hide boxes for all the cats in the ward. And we can condense our list of action items and our instruction to, or for example, our animal care staff by just saying all of the cats in the CCP ward need hide boxes. But can we even go bigger and can we think broader? Perhaps this is a staff training or job aid issue. Can we provide staff with better training about that all cats need hide boxes? Can we provide a visual job aid for them that says this is what kennel setup should look like? And then if we're seeing our CCP room fill up again and again over the weekend, is it possible that we can talk about adding an additional surgery day? Can we outsource weekend CCP cats so they don't have to wait all weekend in the shelter? And so these are examples of identifying individual animal issues, but also starting to identify patterns and are there solutions that address that pattern? Are there big picture solutions that we can talk as a leadership team and address some of these bigger issues, these bigger bottlenecks? And ultimately, that is going to improve our population management. Okay, so again, back to this, it looks time consuming. This is too much. How can we possibly get through our entire shelter? we're going to talk about a plan for implementation. And I want to recognize initially, this is really time consuming and it's really inefficient and it's clunky and it doesn't feel like it's saving you any time. But don't get discouraged. Efficiency does come with time and it comes with consistency. And then comes that life-saving and that improved quality of care. And so I encourage you, and we'll talk about this, but stick with it. Make the commitment to do rounds and stick with it, because you'll start to see positive effects even within the first week, and it'll get more efficient as you do it again and again. All right, so let's talk about a plan for practical implementation. And you'll get after this, the workbook that takes you step by step through a lot of this process. And we are also here to help you if you need help getting this launched. All right, as you start rounds, as you launch daily population rounds, here are your objectives. Number one, it's to master the process. Get used to walking through every kennel, being efficient, moving quickly, only spending a few seconds on every animal. Of course, we're also going to identify action items. We're going to pay attention to the animals that we're looking at. We're going to write things down. But as you launch, your primary objective needs to be to get used to the process and to get the team efficient at it. And the reason this is the primary objective is this is how we maintain engagement and how we make this part of our daily operations. We have now until ever to identify those action items and to keep improving the care. If we become too inefficient, if we lose people in the process, if we don't master this efficiently, we're not going to keep doing it. We have to master the process and we have to get efficient at it. And so keep this in mind. Our objective is going to be mastering the process, and secondary to that in the beginning is identifying those action items. Define the core group. We're going to start with a relatively small group of people, 3 to 5 ballpark. And keep this group consistent as you launch rounds. Everybody watches the training if they're not on this call today. And then you launch rounds. Go do the thing and repeat again and again and again. And get good at it. Get your core group of humans really good and efficient at doing rounds. And then we start swapping out other staff in order to train others on the process. Everyone has to commit. We need buy-in at all levels, including from leadership. We need accountability, both for the process itself, for showing up for this pilot period. We recommend a minimum of 4 weeks. Accountability for everybody who's involved to show up every day that they're supposed to. And some accountability once we start working through the action item list. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. This is an example schedule, and you'll have a blank schedule to fill in your workbook. But this is an example rotation for getting started. And so we have our key departments that we're going to start with, our core departments at our shelter, and start by assigning your most important and limited resource people first. And so oftentimes that's our doctors, it's our medical staff, potentially it's your operational leadership, whoever that is, assign those folks first. And keep in mind when you're getting started, and in general, we don't recommend more than probably about 4 people every day. When we're doing this training, when we're all getting used to it, 4 people or even 5 is reasonable, but really to be efficient at rounds, not more than 3 to 4 people every day. You can see in this first week, we have a max of 4 people going on rounds every day. And as total, part of our core group for launch is only 7 people, no more than 4 per day. And you'll notice we never have a day where everybody swaps out. So somebody that was on rounds yesterday is on rounds today. The group doesn't switch out all at once. We need that continuity. We need somebody that was on rounds yesterday to share with the new folks in the group. Oh, we talked about this yesterday and it's still not addressed, and maybe that's okay. Maybe this is a bigger issue, or it's still not addressed. We need to follow up on that, right? And so the key for that continuity is that we're staggering the swaps. All right, so the first couple of days that you launch this, your goal is going to be to get through about half of the shelter if you have a large shelter. Maybe it's more than that if you have a small shelter. The key here, though, is we're not going to spend more than 60 to 90 minutes walking through the shelter. Really try to aim for that 60-minute mark. The reason for this is if we take any longer than that, everybody gets tired, we get even less efficient than we are to start, which is not very efficient, and things start to fall apart. So we want to keep it short. Again, our goal is not to identify all the problems with every single animal in the shelter. Our primary objective is the process, right? And so we're thinking about learning the process and improving efficiency. So 60 minutes, aim for that 60 minutes. And then we're gonna meet, we're gonna talk in a quieter space, and we're gonna debrief 15 to 30 minutes. We're going to generate action items though, and it's important. We'll start seeing improvements right away as long as we are working through that list. And so dedicate some time, block this off on your calendar, work through the list for a couple of hours. This does not mean that if you are the veterinarian that you have to do every single medical check on that list. It does mean though that you are responsible for delegating that, either delegating assigning it or delegating out those individual tasks. Do start working on the list. It is okay if you don't get through everything these first few days though, because in the first days that you launch rounds, you're going to write down a lot of stuff. Keep your focus on the big things. This is how we keep it quick and we don't get overwhelmed by generating a really, really, really long action item list because we're writing down everything. So focus on big medical issues, things that are impacting welfare or contagious disease that's present in general population. High FASF, so serious behavioral welfare issues, basic kennel needs like hide boxes, bedding, food and water. And again, remember to pay attention to patterns, right? And so if rather than writing down every single cat individually that doesn't have a hide box, maybe it's writing down as a single action item, all the cats in cat ward A need hide boxes. You will start to see opportunities to improve your kennel cards. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but use time on days 1 and 2. You'll already start to identify things that you want to know about animals when you're kennel side. And so this is your opportunity to update those kennel cards. You'll have a short daily debrief. And so these are the questions we'll ask. How did the process go? What things about the process went well? What can we do better tomorrow? What were the things that we noticed in the population, both about individual animals as well as patterns? And what do we need to do to make rounds easier tomorrow? Can we update our kennel cards? What's working well with this action item list? Did we start today on paper and that seems too cumbersome? We want to get together a Google spreadsheet or something like that. Do we want to put together an Airtable form? Have this conversation every day, quickly, debrief, get better and better and better on this first week. Dedicate some time to work through that action item list, right? Take note of patterns, things that are happening that you notice with multiple animals on the same day, or things that are happening on repeat days. So it's happening with different animals day after day after day. Remember to delegate, and it is okay if you can't get through everything. I promise the more that you do this, the list will start to get shorter. Address those patterns rather than individuals, and are there big picture items that leadership can take on to solve for? As we get out later in that first week, have some of the same people, because nobody works 7 days a week, right? So we'll start having to rotate in a few new members. Don't add too much though. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Still focus on the big things and training those additional staff. Remember, number 1 objective is process. This is when though, we do actually try to get through the entire shelter daily. So on these days 3 through 5, and continue to spend time with the list of action items. We'll have a bigger debrief on day 5. What's getting easier, but what's still hard? And what can we do to improve that? Celebrate the wins. What are the positive effects that we're seeing for individuals, for the population? Are we seeing our team practicing improved collaboration and communication? What is this with use of staff time? Like, are we getting more efficient? And then make sure that we design a schedule that's going to work for over the weekend and for the next week. When we get into week 2, that's when we start adding more detailed items. One of the ways I like to say this or think about this is transition from just like basic needs in the absence of negative things to the presence of positive. Does everyone have a pathway? Really start to dig into your population management in week 2 and debrief again at the end of the week. Make that long-term schedule, long-term plan for who's going to be involved in rounds. What time of day are we doing it? This is when you want to solidify that. And then week 3, week 4, you're doing rounds consistently. Now what? This is when we start to rotate in new staff. Maybe it's mid-level management or team leads. Maybe it's even some of our frontline staff and they can start shadowing. It's also when we start to add in our other departments. Can we have folks from marketing or social media? Can we have other additional outcome staff that didn't participate in the first rounds? We can't forget about our animals that are in foster care. So how do we take the principles of daily population rounds and apply that to animals in foster care? So we have another quick reference for you. The way that we've implemented this for many shelters is we do this in a meeting and we run a report and we sit down together and we ask many of the same questions. some altered questions that are specific to this population, right? So this is a modified checklist, and we can do this 2 to 3 times a week. And this ensures that we don't lose sight of our animals in foster care or animals that are off site. What are some of the common challenges? So troubleshooting, again and again, we hear it's taking too long. We're not being efficient. And so it's really taking stock. What discussions are we having kennel side, and can we move those to later? No storytelling, right? This is not the time to tell stories. This is quick discussions, or we move it to later. Just a few seconds for most kennels. Longer than 30 to 60 seconds, we need to write it down to talk about it later. And you know your super efficient people in your shelter. And so identify the person who's going to act as a driver. It becomes their responsibility to keep the group moving. They have the authority to crack that whip, right? Keep the group moving. We can do things like quick drive-by treats. We can, if we need additional information, find an animal care staff person and check in quickly, right, as we walk through the room. But again, not the time for socializing, reminiscing, or storytelling. Other challenges is that we can't fit it in with everything else that we're doing. And so I encourage you to think about, what can this replace? And the key is, once this is working and once this is efficient, you'll need less time to work on some of these other responsibilities. And so it can likely replace things that you're already doing. Early on, the list will be really long. And so again, I encourage you to delegate. The people that are on rounds, that 3 or 4 people, it is not their responsibility to do the entire action item list themselves, but delegating those items to others on the staff. And then again, no patterns instead of individuals. And do make sure you're scheduling time on your calendar to actually work through this list. Kennel cards that support rounds. So here are some examples of information that might be useful for you to have on your kennel cards as you are cage side and walking through the shelter. Things like intake date, right? This is critical to noticing when animals are staying in the shelter longer, who needs help along on their pathway. You may find it useful to have the date they move to this location, what status or stage they're in, a photo and a bio. If that's displayed on the kennel card, you know what animals maybe don't have quality photos or updated bios. Do we want to include key steps like vaccination and spay neuter status? Is this an animal that's undergoing treatment, right? If we see that this animal has a medical or behavioral condition, is he already on meds? Do we need to start meds? Do we need a vet check? Does he need his meds modified? And again, identifying patterns as you perform rounds, and you can modify your kennel cards to support that. So here's an example of a kennel card. And there are some things on this card, 3 things that could be usually helpful during rounds: an intake date, a due out date, so when that animal's stray hold is up, right? And then that animal status. This is another kennel example. And so there's a lot going on this kennel. And again, I'm thinking about not only what information do our staff need, what are we trying to communicate? What does this look like to a potential adopter, right? There's a lot of info here. Do we need all of this information kennel side? Do we need this for rounds? Do our staff need it for other reasons, right? And then I show you this. So this is an updated kennel card, a simpler kennel card that now has a picture for this individual animal, has a lot less information, is a lot easier to process when we're on rounds, still has some of the useful information on it, like intake date, but is much simpler. And so it's another example. You all have to decide exactly what is important to you while you're going on rounds, and modify your kennel signage, your kennel cards in order to support that. Okay, I have for you a video that I'll talk through. So this is essentially what the final product looks like. And so I'll play this video and talk through. This is the room that I'm walking into on rounds. These are the things that I'm noticing or what I'm thinking about. So I'm walking into the room, I'm using all of my 5 senses. I'm smelling, I'm feeling the temperature, feeling the humidity. This room, the temperature and humidity are reasonable. I'm walking up to this first dog and I'm looking in his kennel. So he's there, he's alert, paying attention to me. I notice that transfer door is down. Kennel's clean, there's water, but no food, no bedding, no enrichment. No obvious medical concerns. Walking to the next dog, same thing, no obvious medical concerns, same situation here. Transfer doors down, we have water. No food in the kennel right now, no bedding, no eliminations to evaluate. Next dog, he's got an interesting kennel card that looks different if you saw that. So watching him, he's showing, generally he's alert, he's coming up to the front of the kennel, but is showing some mild signs of FAS. And so that's important. I want to pay attention to what he looks like tomorrow. Is that getting worse? What did he look like yesterday? Another dog here, sleeping when we walk up. He seems like he's resting comfortably. Same thing. So we're noticing some patterns, right? All the transfer doors are down. The kennels look clean, but there's no bedding and no enrichment. This dog, oh, we're noticing some signs of greater FASF in this dog. And so this might be one that I want to follow up on. And so I write this down as an action item. Does he need a behavior plan? Does he need medications? Is he already on things that we need to adjust? And so we continue down the run. And so what I would say as I talk through this, even this, honestly, it's very slow as we're going down this row. Actual rounds, I probably would have done in half the time or less. So we're moving quickly and documenting things quickly that we need to follow up on. So it is very, very, very fast. It is a few seconds per kennel. Okay, I want to share with you a success story. So this is an example shelter, annual intake of about 10,000 animals, on-site inventory, 600 dogs, 100 cats, and 50 other species on site when we started rounds. In this particular shelter, there were a lot of challenges around departmental collaboration. Departments were siloed. There were cat people and there were dog people. Medical had their animals and behavior had their animals, and the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. And sometimes that even resulted in overt conflict, especially when it came to really tough things like euthanasia decisions. And this also meant the decisions were inconsistent for individual animals. Decisions were made in a vacuum without a holistic view of that particular animal. And behavior, again, didn't know what medical was doing, medical didn't know what behavior was doing, or without a holistic view of the whole shelter, right? Our shelter is busting at the seams and way over capacity. Sometimes our decisions might be different today for that same animal than when our shelter is at 50% and has open kennels. There were long lengths of stay and there was lots of overcrowding. Each department was walking through the shelter, but they were doing it at different times. So we picked the shelter to launch daily rounds, and this was early. And so then we hadn't learned yet that sticking to just about an hour on that first day that we launched is better. We did spend 2.5 hours, and we only got through half the shelter, and we generated over 200 action items. Then the team sat together with their laptops and sat in a conference room to start working through the list. And what was really great about that is there was so much conversation and collaboration, not only in the rounds and taking part in the rounds, but as they were working through that list. By the third day, got through half the shelter in an hour and a half. And by week 2, so much more efficient, getting through the entire shelter in 45 minutes to an hour. What did the staff have to say about it? And so here's some quotes. We're making decisions together about individual animals. And remember, these were the teams that were so siloed when we started. The departments aren't at odds with each other anymore. We're being proactive with our population instead of reactive. We can plan for the upcoming intake rather than reacting to being at capacity. What did the metrics say? There was a decrease in the average length of stay and a decrease in the number of long stay dogs. And so this example is of a shelter that then went even further and created this amazing guide, and we'll share this in the resources. And next week, for our final session in population management, we're inviting the person that created this amazing guide and who is at this organization. And so you'll get a chance to hear from Taryn Toll from the Animal Foundation about what this looked like at their shelter, implementation of rounds, and what that meant for population management. All right, let's wrap up a few key points. Be consistent. Make the commitment to doing this. Make the commitment to continue to improve and to solve the problems. Block off the time on your calendars. Get leadership buy-in. Hold each other accountable. Leaders hold their staff accountable, both for the process, for sticking to rounds, for launching it, and for making it work. And recognize it's going to be clunky and awkward and take a long time in the beginning, and it will feel really hard, but just keep doing it. Your team has to commit to it. It will result in happier and healthier pets, happier staff, and more life-saving. Our National Shelter Medicine team has helped several really, really large shelters, numerous shelters with over 500 animals on site to implement this. And each and every one, not only has there been success at getting efficient and improving, but we've heard from those teams that it's improving things even in that first week, improving things for the animals and for the people. And that ultimately means more life-saving. Okay, so for those of you here today or watching the recording, what's your homework? If you're on leadership, on the management team, meet as a leadership team. Review the workbook that we'll send out that walks you through this process that I just talked through. make a plan together to pilot daily population rounds. Put it on the calendar. Be realistic about the necessary time commitment in the first few weeks of launch. It is a big time commitment in the beginning because it is clunky, because your action item list is going to be so long, but make the commitment, put it on the calendar. And we recommend that you commit to a 4-week pilot launch. This gives you the opportunity to troubleshoot and to get better and better and better at it. And so, like I said, this is for all of you that are here today, this is your homework. Look through that workbook and commit to that. I want all of you to remember, you heard before, we have this $1,000 fast track fund. And so for shelters that complete the workbook activities that were sent out previously, you could be selected to receive a $1,000 grant. And so complete all the activities in that Pathways to Lifesaving workbook and submit that workbook via the link. I want to call out, this is the workbook that you've already received. Your daily rounds workbook is separate. You don't have to finish this, the daily rounds workbook, to be eligible for this. The daily rounds workbook, we recognize daily rounds implementation is a lot and it's potentially going to take a big time commitment. And we don't expect that you'll get done with that by the end of August necessarily. You may need to book that out a little bit. And so we want you to be intentional about when you're planning it. So, but to be eligible for this, it's completing the pathway planning workbook that you've already received. Shelters that are selected to receive funding will be notified by email by the end of August. And then another reminder about our working group, we have that QR code again. If you have questions, if you need help, you want to troubleshoot with your colleagues, you want to talk more, submit your interest here. And then from the National Shelter Medicine team of Best Friends, if you need anything related to shelter medicine, you can email us or request help via that top QR code. And we have a library of medical protocols as well as additional resources, including some population management resources here as well. And so these are links that are always good. You can reach out to us here even after this course is over. All right. And with that, that wraps up our talk on daily population rounds today. If we have any time for questions, I'm open to taking those. And if not, then I'll kick it back to Erica.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erin. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you're more than welcome to put them in chat or the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. And while we wait for some questions, I will go ahead and just share our last few notes so that people can type out any questions that they may have. So let me just get this up real quick. Okay, so as I scroll over, sorry. So we have our email that will be coming out after this that is going to have wonderful resources that the shelter medicine team has put together for us, as well as resources for continuing daily population rounds in your organization, pathway planning, all those good things. So our recording of this session will be on the Network Partner YouTube channel, and that will be linked in the email for you to view after this and share amongst your organization or even outside of it. And we will have that worksheet available. We'll have week 1 and week 2's activities attached to that email, but we'll also include the daily population worksheet that Dr. Erin has so graciously made for us this time. And our last session of this series will be on August 6th, and we'll have an incredible panel available. So we will be featuring the names listed on the screen there. We have April Moore, who's also with Best Friends, Jackie Hernandez from Nebraska Humane. We have Shelby Lawrence, who is from All Kind Animal Initiative. And we also have Taryn Tull from the Animal Foundation, who was mentioned in this presentation. So we're really excited. This would be a wonderful panel. It will be led by Dr. Erin. So we are looking forward to some great content. And again, if you have any questions, that would be a great time to answer those or no. And then if you are not already a network partner, but would like to become one, we always encourage that you can sign up for additional opportunities and grants that are available through our network partner program. And yeah. All right.
It looks like we have one question that just popped up in the Q&A box, and so I can take this one. So besides the official Heidi boxes that you can purchase, What are the other ideas that are less expensive or that we can make? I love this question because we're always looking for opportunities to, to save a little bit of our financial resources. And so hiding boxes don't have to be expensive, right? We can use just cardboard boxes. I know some folks worry about the aesthetics. I love getting kids into the shelter to decorate the cardboard boxes and then they look adorable, right? It can be things as simple as if we have perches set up. I love because this provides a perching opportunity for cats that love to be up high. We just put a curtain down over that corunda perch or whatever perch that you have, or some kennels that have built-in shelves. And so just attaching a little curtain. It can even be just putting a curtain over half of the kennel, right? Any opportunity to just give cats an opportunity to retreat drastically reduces their stress levels, and we know that that keeps them happier and healthier. And I'll just throw in, because sometimes we get concerns that, like, oh my gosh, if we put hide boxes in cat kennels, the cats are just going to hide and they won't come out for adopters. And in fact, we actually have research that suggests the opposite. Cats that are given opportunities to retreat actually demonstrate more of the behaviors that we associate with adoption, because cats that are less stressed actually come out more and approach people more, and we know those are things that get them adopted. So I encourage you, hide boxes for cats are not optional, and you can get creative, and there's definitely cheap options, just cardboard boxes. We all know, we all get Amazon, right? And oftentimes the shelter gets Amazon. So take those boxes and make them into hiding spots for your cats.
That is
And yes, cats love cardboard boxes.
They do, don't they? If anyone has any other questions, you're welcome to enter them in chat. We do have a few more minutes left. You're welcome to take advantage of that. I feel like cardboard boxes are also really great for our dog populations too, when we can do like the sniff. They can put little treats in it and sniff, and I love that as well, some nose work. So
yeah, I love that you brought that up. So that particular kennel picture that I showcased, like the concern, right, was that the dogs were going to get foreign bodies, but like all dogs in the shelter situation, we want to give them enrichment. We need to give them enrichment. That is also not optional. And so can we do things like give them enrichment cardboard that they can tear up, that it's okay if they eat, right? So we can, lots of applications of our Amazon boxes and shelters.
yes, exactly. And you can also ask your community to donate some if you need additional cardboard boxes. Excellent. Well, since we have no other questions, again, you are more than welcome to reach out to us. The email for the shelter medicine team is available on the Trello board that we have created, which will be linked in the email that you will get post session. So you're more than welcome to reach out to them with additional questions, or to us as well. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Wednesday. We will see you next week for our panel session. Thank you so much, Dr. Aaron. We appreciate you being here and spending time with us, and such great information. I love daily
Thank y'all. Yeah, see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.